A one and a two and a chick-a-boom a chick.
Hey remodelers, before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our friends at Builder Funnel. I've personally known Spencer and his team for over a decade, and they are the marketing agency for remodelers who are serious about growth. They've developed something called the Remodeler and Builder Growth Framework, which covers all 5 key pillars you need to scale: attract, convert, nurture, close, and measure. In other words, it's not just marketing, it's a complete system to help you grow your revenue and your team, and the results speak for themselves. Builder Funnel has helped clients generate millions in tracked revenue, including $4 million for a San Antonio remodeler, scaling a Delaware remodeler to nearly $10 million, and generating over $2 million for a Kansas City remodeler. If you're tired of inconsistent referrals and want a proven system to drive predictable, high-quality leads and to actually turn them into booked projects, head over to builderfunnel.com/ROTR to learn more. That's builderfunnel.com/ROTR. Welcome to the Remodelers on the Rise show. I have my new friend, Chris Shurian. See, I practiced it. Did I nail it the second time too?
Good job. Nice work. Yeah, good job.
Yes, very good, very good.
Off to a good start.
That's usually the hardest part. You got to get the train on the tracks. You got to get it going in the right direction, and then we're off and rolling.
And we can't all have a name like Kyle Hunt. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a doozy.
Yes, very simple, very clean. My wife a few years ago said, your name? I said, yeah, I know my name. It's kind of whiny. Kyle. And my wife's least favorite trait is whininess.
Right.
Oh, nothing annoys her more than whininess. And so it is what it is. My middle name is Ryance, Ryence, which is kind of it's named after a King Ryance from back in somewhere in Europe back in the day. Right. So that feels stronger.
That's way less whiny. That's like manly is what that is. I
Yes.
like it. Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to flip things, and maybe I should just be Ryance Hunt. I should just embrace it. That is my grandfather's name, Ryance Hunt. We'll see. We'll try it. But I'm talking to Chris today. Bootstraps and Battle Scars is kind of his current small business coaching brand and everything that you're doing. But I was looking up Chris on LinkedIn, and I'm going, oh, this man has done a few things. Remodeler, builder for a good number of years. That's what connected us at first. He had reached out just saying, hey, I'm doing some different podcasts, and I was part of Les Cunningham, which was an early kind of peer group model in our industry. And so it has the remodeling side, and then also just has the entrepreneurial side. I was looking at your description: small business operations coach, 8 times founder, 4 times exit, mentor, advisor, podcast host, master of ceremonies. Oh my, public speaker, moderator, and customer service junkie.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's your LinkedIn. Did you write it?
I was going to say, thanks for the intro, but that's what I have on my LinkedIn.
Yes.
It is, Yeah.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about customer service. We're going to talk about mindset. We're going to talk about the entrepreneurial side. Sometimes I use the podcast just to get to know new people. It's kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I've got somebody as a guest today that I kind of picked up on pretty quick. He's been through a lot of business experience, a lot of entrepreneurial experience, and I think there's some wisdom that we're going to glean from you today. So that's our goal, is to give the people listening to this some wisdom. I will also add, on my titles of all the different titles, I have auctioneer, live auctioneer as one of my titles. You need to add that one, sir.
I'm going to have to practice that, because I sit there and watch auctioneers, and I just think it's the coolest thing ever. I wish I could do that. I'm going to have to practice that.
Okay. Now I must confess, because I just don't want it to be built up or for me to get offered another gig. There's a nonprofit that I'm a board of director on, and we have this live auction thing. So I'm the live auctioneer, but I actually don't sound like a live auctioneer. But I do need to practice it, because this is year 3 or 4 that I'm going to be doing it, and I feel like I need to come and really get the rhythm of
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah. I think
please
that's
add
cool.
that to your list of things to do. That would be amazing to have that mixed in with those other ones. Chris, give us a little backstory. Give us a little bit of who you are, what you're about, and then we'll get into these different topics.
Yeah. Yeah. Kyle, some people say they're a serial entrepreneur. I started using the term entrepreneur is probably more accurate for my
Mm,
career. I started in construction remodeling specifically, had a great run, had great success, really, really enjoyed that industry. Um, and then I ran into some challenges. I ran into 08, 09,
mm,
and I think a lot of people remember those days. And I was a little extended, overextended. As an entrepreneur, I'm very optimistic, very persistent. When people say, "Hey, the economy's getting kind of weird," man, I double down. I just keep going because when you have a positive mindset and you're just out there to win, you kind of sometimes have blinders on and you miss some of those signs. But so yeah, that kind of beat me up a little bit. And then after that, I had an opportunity to roll into some other ideas and opportunities, and I've had some success. I've had my teeth kicked in a few times. I've been up, I've been down, and my new platform, Bootstraps and Battle Scars, is exactly that. Any serial entrepreneur totally understands what that means. We've bootstrapped. We've started with nothing and built up, and then we have some battle scars to show for it. In which, once again, being Mr. Optimistic here, for me, bootstraps are learning opportunities, lessons I've learned along the way. And
mm,
so, I had a little exit last year from the restaurant business. I'm very proud of the idea that I actually exited from the restaurant business. It's a very difficult business. Anybody who is having success in the restaurant business, I admire. They're special. They're special humans because it is tough. And I decided at this point to spend more time helping others be successful. So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I have my own little mastermind that I put together for owners and entrepreneurs, and I enjoy public speaking. I think I'm going to look into this auctioneer situation and see what that looks like.
mm.
Might
Man,
add to my.
I just gave you your next 10 years right there. You're gonna look back on this moment and think that's where that idea came from.
I am. I'm going to give you credit for that. Kyle
Thank you.
Bryant's Hunt was my
Nailed it.
inspiration to become an auctioneer.
Nailed it.
Yeah. So that's who I am. And, I enjoy serving others, so it says on my LinkedIn profile, I'm a customer service fanatic. I mean, every business I was ever involved in, probably except for one, was very heavily involved in providing that customer experience and providing more, under promise, over deliver type thing. And so now I have the opportunity to serve my clients. I have clients that are in all different industries. I have a few in the construction remodeling world that like I said, I love that industry, and even other industries. So it's great for me to sit down and meet with them and help them work through some of their challenges. And I'm not going to lie, there are days when I suffer from imposter syndrome, and I look in the mirror and think, who am I? But man, I've had a lot of experience, and most, if not all, of my coaching is based on my personal experience. I have an experience somewhere in my brain that applies to whatever problems some other business owner is dealing with, and I enjoy helping them out a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I can just hear it. And like, if you have the heart that starts with, I want to serve this person, and then you sit in front of a screen like this, or you sit in front of a business owner and you say, what kind of challenges are you having? What kind of problems are you having? Welcome to coaching. Now, it takes skill to coach well. It takes skill to make sure that we're encouraging them correctly and giving them the right advice and creating action steps and making sure things are being followed through on, and setting priorities and understanding them and how they tick. There's a lot that goes into it, but I'm here to serve and I'm here to help them solve problems is a good place to start. Frankly, even from a leadership standpoint, you sit in front of your team members and say, what challenges are you having? How can I make your life easier? It's an amazing place to coach, quote unquote, from there. I do want to touch on the 08, the 09, not to relive that too much, but you mentioned, I miss some of the signs. As you reflect back on that period of time, and as we're in, I don't know how you would describe the period of time we are here now, but there's some ups and downs. There's a little angst out there. There's a little, what's the next year going to look like? What are some of those signs that you look back on that you kind of learned from that jump out at you?
Kyle, there was a lot of things I did right. I was very There's a lot of things I did right that helped me survive that downfall. Um, for example, when you're doing well and you're having financial success. At the time, I had 4 different companies going and operating, and we were doing well and we were making money. Um, and at that point, you're allowed to have luxury items. I had a boat, I had a houseboat, I had a cabin, we had cars, we had motorcycles. And so one thing I did right that I would teach people is that I paid cash for all that. And so the fact that I paid cash means that maybe I didn't have the nicest, newest model of boat, but my boat was great and it was a few years older, but I paid cash. So when the economy started to tank and the jobs shriveled up and banks were going out of business, and I'm trying to figure out how to pay for a $1.3 million piece of land that I just bought for a subdivision, I could sell the boat. And even though I maybe sold the boat for less than it was worth, I didn't have a loan to pay off. It was like a savings account. So I have to say there was a few things like that I did right. But then, I probably got a little big for my britches. When you're having success, sometimes you get the ego steps in and says, wow, look at me. I'm doing great. I'm always going to make money. So I'm not going to plan for the future right now. I'm going to roll the dice and I'm all in. So if I'm making money, I'm putting it back into another project. If I make money, I'm building a spec home and putting it in the parade. I'm making money. I'm going to go buy some land. I'm going to put a bunch of money down. The bank's going to come in. We're going to do this little subdivision. And so I was probably a little cocky of sorts. And that's where I got in trouble. That's where I got in trouble. So for me, if I was to go back now, Kyle, you'll learn about me because we're going to become fast friends and we're going to, spend time together. But, being a very optimistic human, a little aggressive, I just lost my train of thought. Totally lost my train of thought. I got sidetracked.
Well, you started dreaming about, I wonder if Kyle does like me. Maybe I'm trying to speak this into existence that we're going to be fast friends. And then you had this picture in your head of us riding tandem motorcycle. I don't know what you started going down.
It was like I was dreaming about us riding our bikes down the road, just having a good time, laughing, and the whole thing. But yeah, so I was a little bit big for my britches and extended myself a little too much. So what I was going to say is I don't live in regret. I certainly don't live in regret. But if I was to go back and do things differently, I probably would have slowed my roll a little bit. I've been a little more conservative. I would have spent a little more time on my rainy day fund. And I would have taken if you make $1 million and you put $1 million back into a project, maybe I would make $1 million and put 500,000 in a project and go stash the 500 under the mattress or something. So that's probably the one lesson I would have learned and would have done a little differently. Because like I said, you get a little big for your britches. You think, man, and back then, Kyle, I mean, you're a young whippersnapper, so I'm not sure where you were at in 08, 09. But you could buy a piece of dirt, especially here in Utah. I could buy a piece of land today. I could flip it tomorrow. I could double my money and do a simultaneous close. I was talking to an old friend of mine the other day about the days when you can walk into the title company, you walk into one room, you close on the purchase, you walk into the other room, you close on the sale, and you make money. And I mean, that was pretty crazy back then. So.
I'm a little whippersnappery, but 08, I had this great idea that said, hey, honey, I'm going to quit my job and we got no money in the bank to fall back on. And I want to start my own business. That was 08 for me.
There you go.
And what was interesting is my first handful of clients were business owners who had built up their rainy day, who had saved money, who go, wow, the phone just got real quiet and I need to work on our marketing and sales and that side of things. And as I look back on it, I'm like, those were my first batch of clients, are people who thought through that. So I think in the here and now, what you heard there was, hey, debt, don't get all caught up in your little reel that says you want to make money, you better go up to debt to your eyeballs and and leverage. Is there some wisdom in some of that? Perhaps, but like paying cash for your luxury goods, paying cash for vehicles, trying to be debt free is a great goal. And then even what you're saying there, business is about risk. It's about like how much risk do you want to take? And I think there's some wisdom that maybe some people listening to this needed to hear of going, careful. You don't need to be super aggressive. Maybe you need to make that happen over a little slower time period so that you take a chunk and put it into something a little safer, get a really strong nest egg going. And yes, you're still an entrepreneur. You're still going to invest in things. But I think there's some good wisdom in there for all of us. Cash is still king. What are you talking about, Kyle? Well, inflate. Okay, I get it. But right, cash is still king, and being safe and conservative and solid with your financial plan is important. Be careful with the risks and overextending yourself. And also, yeah, I think as my business has grown, I think my ego, I've been needing to check my ego a lot more. I think there is a little bit when success comes where we've got to be careful not to get cocky, where we've got not to get too confident. At the same time, confidence is also a skill. It's a gift. It's a good thing. But that's also a reminder for us is to let's have a little mirror time. Let's reflect on that and make sure that whatever that looks like, that we're keeping that in check. Let's actually kind of segue that into mindset. You think about mindset. You mentioned kind of positive mindset. You've talked about, you know what? That's not a loss. That's a learning opportunity. I think before we click the record button, you were talking about some glass half full side of things. How do you view mindset? You're talking to remodeling business owners on this. What comes to your mind for the mindset side of things?
I love that topic. And when I first ventured into the adult world and I was providing for a family, I was doing sales, and I would listen to cassette tapes, okay, back in the day, and any cassette tape I can get my hand on, Tony Robbins back when he first started, Zig Ziglar, all those guys. I really programmed my brain to think positively, and that served me so well over the years. I had a mentor once, a boss, a manager of mine who was just the most positive guy you could ever meet. And it was real. Like you could never catch him saying anything negative, even when it was just for fun. He just wasn't programmed that way. So that positive mindset, in my opinion, is key to being successful. We all have our moments. We all have our challenges. Well, in 08, 09, when things were pretty hairy, I mean, my brain was kind of like, okay, well, this is temporary. Right. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to survive this. I'm going to provide, I'm going to sell the boats, sell the Corvettes, do this. I got the cash. My family never went without, and it was hard. But, just having the thought that, hey, this is temporary. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to push through it, and I'm going to make it happen, serves me well. And it served a lot of people I've seen well. And especially when you're building a business, not everything goes perfect. You have your moments, I have a client right now that just had the perfect storm of two really bad clients, like two multi-million-dollar remodels, and both of his clients were just nightmares. And I'm sure everyone listening to this knows about those clients, and it hit him hard. And there's days when we get on the phone and I'm just, building him up and helping him feel good about himself and telling him that, hey, David, just because you have two right now that are really bad, think about the good stuff that's happened up to this point. You're a great contractor. You do a great job, and it's just a moment. And let's just take this and learn from it. Let's improve our processes, improve our systems, maybe help, sniff these bad clients out before we sign them and move on. And then you're going to have another good client. And it's already happening. Like even in the last 4 or 5 weeks that we've been talking about these couple clients, he's already got new great clients just stepping up and stepping in. And so, yeah, I think the mindset is key to navigating this entrepreneurial journey.
Did you have a pretty positive mindset already? Or when you got into sales, when you got into business, when you started to listen to the Zigs and the Brian Tracys and all those guys, did that kind of flip for you from what it was before, or did it help it grow? Or
that's a good question. As a teenager, I don't know what I was like as a teenager. I think my dad would always tell me, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. And, as a kid, you're like, yeah, okay, Dad, cool. But so I don't know. I was probably a pretty optimistic kid. I was pretty happy, I think.
Would you say that somebody that is fairly pessimistic or glass half empty can train themselves to flip that more into a positive mindset?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it takes work. Sometimes you have to remind yourself that that's what you're going to do. And sometimes it takes another person to point it out. Like, I mean, we all know people that are super pessimistic and, the sky is falling, that sometimes don't know they're doing that. And so, if you surround yourself with good people and surround yourself with people that are that way and positive, it's contagious, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And like I said, thousands and thousands of hours of cassette tapes and listening and reading books. Yeah, I totally program my brain to be this way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's good for us to hear, especially as you grow. Frankly, as you, no matter, even if you're a solopreneur, but as you grow your business, you quickly realize that more of your time and effort is going to be put towards leadership. When you're starting this remodeling business, you're just trying to help the client and serve the client and figuring out trade partners and team members, and oh crap, I got to figure out the financial side, and I got to figure out the marketing, the sales side. And then as you get things established, you realize that, oh, this is a leadership game. This, so much of this is about the team around me, and making it a great place to work and a great culture. And so much of it becomes leadership. And you can be somebody that maybe has a little bit of that natural pessimistic approach. And frankly, that could be a good character trait. But if you want to grow as a leader and be somebody that can motivate and encourage, and that people want to work for and hitch their wagon to long term, training your mind to be positive, training your mind to look at a setback as a learning opportunity. It might feel a little bit like you're faking it, but over time, it starts to become more of who you truly are, and who you're becoming. It's just an interesting concept, and I appreciate that you said, like, you can absolutely go from negative. I wholeheartedly believe that what you focus on grows. And if you are focusing on everything around you that's negative, the negativity will absolutely grow. And if you focus on the positives around you, and I'm not saying ignoring the negatives, but spend more time focusing on the positives will grow.
You know, it was years ago. I think it was Wayne Dyer. I read a book or watched a video or something, and he even talks about how, you know, this paradox where you can even look at the negative stuff that happens and you can turn it into positive. You know, like you know, I live in Utah and we can have some pretty good winters, right? I'm sure in Michigan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, I have zero problem with snow, with rain, with the storms, because you know what? I know that snowstorm, that rainstorm is going to make for a beautiful spring. It's going to make for a beautiful summer. And that was something I learned from Wayne Dyer, that you can even look at the negative stuff, look at the stuff that some people are complaining about, and you can spin it. There's always something good that comes out of everything that happens in your life. And that's part of that conditioning.
Yeah. Even you didn't even realize you did this, Chris, but you know, we have some pretty good winters. That even sounded positive, but what you meant was we have some horrible, crappy, overwhelming, this sucks winters. But you even already spun it there. And what you're describing there of spinning it, spinning might be a good word, although it immediately brings to mind politicians, which does not make us feel very positive. But another way of saying that is, you're looking at the story from this angle. Consider looking at the story from this angle. It's still the same story. It's still, you're not making anything up, but by looking at the story from a different angle, it totally changes the way that you're seeing it and thinking about it. Mindset, be a student of mindset, be a student of being more positive. Look up, there's still cassette tapes out there, but guess what? They're also on YouTube. Look up old school Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy. Look up Tony Robbins and fill more of your mind. You might even just listen to more Kyle Hunt and Chris Shurian. Who knows?
There could be some good stuff there. There could be
a couple positive guys there. But if this is an Achilles heel for you, you've got to work on it, and you can absolutely work on it. Let's just a quick break here to spotlight our friends at Builder Funnel, the agency that's proven over and over they know how to generate serious revenue for remodelers. And when I say revenue, I mean real numbers you can measure. 6.3 million for a remodeler in Atlanta, 1.2 million for a remodeler in Salt Lake City, even 746,000 for a deck builder in Jacksonville. And that's just a handful. The truth is, most marketing agencies talk about impressions and clicks. Builder Funnel talks about projects sold and revenue added. They've built a system that takes the guesswork out of marketing so you know your investment is working. If you're serious about growth and want your marketing to finally perform at the level your craftsmanship does, Builder Funnel is the partner you want. So if you're ready for a marketing system that actually helps grow your business, head over to builderfunnel.com/ROTR to learn more. Builderfunnel.com/ROTR. Let's kind of shift from that. That was some good stuff right there. Let's shift over kind of to just the customer service. kind of a cold phrase, customer service. But I believe we are talking about the way that we take our clients through the process, through the experience. What is their story, and how do we really make sure that we are not crummy when it comes to customer service? What comes to your mind as some of your top things in that topic?
Well, when I decided to get into the remodeling world, I had spent several years in sales and was taught a very professional way of treating customers. You know, when you're a professional salesman, you're taught how to treat the customer and listen to the customer and serve their needs. And so when I came into the remodeling world, I thought to myself, you know, if I could bring a level of professionalism into the construction world that, you know, the reputation sometimes isn't that great. I think it's a lot better now, but back when I was doing it, you know, contractors were late. They never showed up on time. They never followed a budget. They never got done when they said they were going to get done. Mm-hmm. And so my whole philosophy was, hey, if I can bring a level of professionalism into this industry, I might have something. And so I did that. And I'll tell you what, customers were just, you know, like flabbergasted. That's a big word, I know, but don't ask me to spell it. But, you know, if I knew I was going to be 5 minutes late to an appointment, I would call them ahead of time and say, hey, I'm running 5 minutes behind. And sometimes you have this little moment of silence on the other line, like, you're really calling me to tell me you're going to be late? Like, they expect me to be late. Mm. And so for me, that was important. And let's go back to the whole reading and studying. You know, Walt Disney, I'm a huge fan of Walt Disney and Disney World and Disneyland and what he's done there. And I've read many books about the whole Disney experience when you walk in the park. And, you know, that was Walt Disney. You know, he had this vision for how he wanted people to perceive his amusement park compared to everyone else's. And man, he worked it. He would sit there and watch people come in and out of the park. He would study them, and he knew what their natural traits were. You know, he studied people and realized that a person will walk like 26 steps with a piece of trash in their hand before they start getting fidgety. So guess what? You go to Disneyland and guess what's everywhere in Disneyland are trash cans, right? And he also figured that people don't want to look at trash. So he invented the lids for trash cans so you can put your trash in there. And so I love studying about the customer experience. And I would apply that to every business I was in, especially the remodeling and construction world. And I'll tell you what, there's people that love that, people that responded to that. And they knew that we did things differently. Even my subcontractors still today, I have a couple subs that were on my podcast just recently who have gone on to have great success, have had great exits actually in this, you know, service professional world. And a lot of it goes back to how they treated the customer and what they learned from me on, you know, how to treat a customer's home, you know, clean up after yourself every day, whether you're coming back or not, you're cleaning up after yourself. You're, you know, wiping your feet, you're treating their home with respect. And I think there's an important play there.
What do you think the key to getting that stuff integrated into your team is?
Oh yeah, it's just the talking about it, training about it, talking about it. And then when you think they get it, you keep talking about it. Another thing that was important for me is I would show up on every job site. I mean, I got to a point where we were pretty big, and I had 50 employees, and we had people going in every other direction. Sometimes I didn't even know what jobs we had going on, but I'd make it a habit to go show up on job sites and do a little walkthrough, and I call it, you know, inspect what you expect. And like I said, once you think you got it and you think they've heard it, you keep talking about it, and you just have to pound it into their brain that this is how we do things, and talk about it all the time.
I mean, I kind of, if I would have said, all right, $100 on what is Chris going to say, done that. That's pretty much what I would think that you were going to say about that, which is reassuring to anybody listening to this. You want to give a better client experience. You know what to do. Start holding get clear with your standards, and then just start holding it to it. Yes, a lot of us have heard that phrase, inspect what you expect, but I just heard it again, and it kind of hit me a little different way of going, well, duh, but let's get clear with the expect, and let's not tire from reminding them, and let's not go, all right, let me take the foot off the gas. Business is super fickle. There's another big word for you. Fickle. I like it. Flabbergasted, fickle. Fidgety. You talked about fidgety there a second ago too. It's fickle. You start taking your foot off the gas a little bit. It is amazing how quickly the movement that you've made forward in your business can go back to where it was 2 years before. It's amazing how, so we got to keep that going. A couple things based on what you said. One, flabbergasted. Don't make you spell it. You want to be stressed out? Go to your 8th grade son's spelling bee. I was there a week and a half ago. They could have put me up there in front of that microphone and said, your word is boy. And I would have been like, and I've spoken in front of a lot of people, but man, was it high intensity.
Yeah.
He got 4th place.
Oh, he did. That's pretty good, actually.
He did pretty good. Yeah. And then when you were talking about Disney, I happened to be on my phone at 7 a.m. because my sweet Annie, who's our youngest, she's 12, she informed my wife and I a few months ago, Mom and Dad, you took Thomas, Piper, and Calvin on an individual trip, and I have not had my individual trip with my parents. And we thought, well, welcome to being the 4th kid. We're not, we don't remember these things. So it determined that we were going to take a long weekend to Disney World. So I was on my little app this morning, securing my lightning lanes and whatnot. I must say, I took care of business this morning. Nice. But as you were talking about the Disney World thing, it's interesting in a world of podcasts and AI and ChatGPT and the way that we can quickly summarize things. You do not understand really the reason that you were able to articulate that Disney World thing deeper is because you've actually spent time truly reading and truly studying Walt Disney. You actually read the book, and I've read that book, and it's probably 10 pages to tell that story about the trash cans and whatnot. You can't shortcut really spending time studying something. I'm into baseball cards right now and Detroit Tigers history, baseball history, and my kind of downtime reading. I've been doing it more, and I do it on my phone on the Kindle app. But it's kind of been my routine for 20, 30 minutes before I go to sleep as I'm reading a biography on Ty Cobb. And super interesting. It's a book called Beautiful, A Terrible Beauty. Ty Cobb's got quite the story, he was feisty. He was a fighter. There's just a lot of stuff that went on with him, but he was an excellent ball player. And I think this author is making the case that he might be getting the short end of the stick a little bit. And my parents came up the other day. My mom actually made some Easter baskets for the kids, yibbity yabbity. And my dad and I were talking baseball, and I said, I'm reading this Ty Cobb biography. And it was interesting because I'm slowly reading this book, my recollection of the stories and who he is and the environment of what 1909 baseball was like, my story had a lot of color to it and a lot of detail to it that watching a quick video or reading a quick social media post wouldn't have had. In other words, Chris is talking about Disney. He's actually read the book here in 2026, lest we not get away from actually spending time reading and really watching things in depth, because that's what's really going to saturate us and help us to lead better, and it's going to really impact us. So I wanted to get that in there.
That was good. Yeah, and you used some big words too. I was impressed, like yibbity yabbity. I'm not sure how you spell that either. We're going to have our own spelling bee and see what happens here.
Did I say yibbity yabbity?
Yibbity yabbity, yeah.
Yeah. Yada yada.
Yada yada. Well,
that's a Seinfeld thing.
And you're totally right there, Kyle. The reading thing is huge. I still read books. I'm still kind of weird that way. In fact, that's just a thing. In fact, some of my coaching clients, I bring a book and they kind of look at it like, what's that? It's a book. Yeah. There's pages in it. And I've got the book's pages dog-eared and underlined. And sometimes I flip back through there, but you're absolutely right. You got to keep learning. You got to keep doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. And people learn in different ways. So take what I said, but the substance part, we can't take the Cliff Notes version of this stuff. We can't take the little snippet of this. The more we really dig in, the more impactful it will be. When I hear one of my clients, or even when I think about it, and they're like, you know what? I read that book that made a big impact on me 5 years ago, and it's the 4th time I've read it. And I've heard that advice so often. And every year I get older, I'm like, there's wisdom there. Just keep reading stuff that really makes an impact, that reminds you of customer service, that reminds you of whatever that topic is. So we talked about mindset. We talked about kind of the customer service side of things. Give me 2 more little tidbits on the customer service, and then we're going to go into the third area of things.
Yeah. My philosophy, and this was my motto back in the construction day, was what I called the barefoot.
What's a motto?
The barefoot.
Hang on, you didn't. I was trying to quote a movie. What's a motto? You know it?
I don't.
Nothing. What's the matter with you? It's
Yeah,
from The
there you
Lion
go.
King. I don't
That's
know a
the
lot of
line.
movie quotes, but that one's a good one.
That's a
I
good
think
one. I
it's
liked it. I
Timba
think
and
you did a
Pumbaa.
great job.
So, but you said a motto. What's a
The motto.
motto? Your
The
motto. Go
motto.
ahead.
The barefoot principle. So, for example, if we were doing a remodel, a room addition, a remodel, whatever, my philosophy was that when we're off the job, we've left for the day, the client comes home at night, they should be able to walk through the job site barefoot and not have to worry about stepping on nails, stepping on sharp objects. And we even parlayed that into the new construction. Like we did things differently, and what happened is all of our trades were taught that this is how we do it. I mentioned my podcast and having one of my old trade contractors on there, and he tells that story about, I showed up on a job site. This is when we were pretty young, and he was done for the day, and I said, "Well, you're gonna like clean up, right?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, but we're gonna be back tomorrow morning, so I figured I could just leave my stuff out." And I just said, "No, that's not how we operate. It's the barefoot principle. I want this customer to be able to walk out here tonight. They're excited about it. They want to see what's going on." And what's the chances of them actually walking out there barefoot? Probably not likely. But just the idea that they could, and that we'd clean up the job site in that manner was important, and it stuck. I still cross paths with guys that worked for us and worked on our jobs, and they still, some follow that philosophy. Quite frankly, there's a lot that don't. There's some guys that just don't see that as a priority. But that's not my company. But if I have a company, then that's what we're going to do, and that's how we're going to do it. And like you said, you can't take your foot off the gas when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have to be consistent. Good. And another quote from Walt Disney was, "You have to be consistent and unrelenting in getting that principle and those concepts to people." And that's key. Consistence and unrelenting. You just can't stop. It's always something you have to have at the forefront.
It's good. So the other thing that we tossed out there when we were doing a little prep for this, 5P, preparation prevents poor performance. Had a little 5P, a little prep going. Was you said the entrepreneurial grind and how to manage it. The entrepreneurial grind and how to manage it. Tell us about that.
Well, I read a book. I read a book years ago, and in this book they talked about the idea of you work really hard until you're 65 and you retire and you enjoy life. But in that same book, he talks about what a fallacy that is. I mean, what if you get to 65 and you don't have health, or if you're not even alive, or you don't have your spouse, your partner, your kids are all grown? So the takeaway for me reading that book was life balance. On being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, it is a grind. It's a lot of work. It's hard work. But you have to have balance in your life. So you have to spend time on yourself. You have to spend time with your family. You have to go on vacation. You have to take time off. I mean, there was a season when, I'm coaching my kids in sports, and that was a priority for me. And if I had to leave the office at 3 p.m. to get to practice and do it, I did it because that was my priority. So in my opinion, especially when you're the owner, a lot of owners think that the business won't run without them. Well, maybe that's the case, but in my opinion, that's not a very good business. Yeah. So you want to build a business that works around what your schedule is. And if your schedule is, I'm going to work 4 days a week and the rest I'm not, then do it. The business will adapt to that. If you say, hey, I'm going to take a month and do a vacation every summer, you know what? Your business will adapt to that. So for me, it's that life balance, which helps offset the grind. That's something that I practiced. I had pretty good luck with it. I've enjoyed life along the way. I've done a lot of things. My wife and I, we have a Harley. Maybe I look like a Harley guy. I don't know, but we take off and we go for a ride.
I think if the people are watching on the video and they look at you and they look at me, they're probably going, "Well, Kyle's the Harley guy, obviously."
Obviously.
But tilt your head a little bit.
I'm trying.
Tilt your head. Oh, see, now they see the little long hair and they're like, "Oh, that is a Harley guy."
Yeah. And then, we got all kinds of stuff
tats.
Yeah. So I'm a Harley guy. We love going on road trips. We have a motor home. We like to go places. We have a house in Mexico. We like to go down there, and it's just a priority. It's just a priority. So life balance is absolutely doable, and that helps soften up that grind.
There's I like to think of the people listening to this, and some go, even when he threw out the 1 month off in the summer, And like, oh, okay, Chris, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe right now in the season of your business, that obviously would make no sense to you. But maybe you want to build a business that would allow you to do that. Maybe you need to just even think about that and go, what would that take? And if you start thinking about it, you'll start to recognize team members. You'll start to recognize there's probably need to be some growth in your business. You'd recognize the roles that you would have to take off your primary plate and hand off to others. I think some of us who have been in business for a certain number of years, we fall into this trap that's like, well, I started this with the thought that this was going to enable me to really enjoy life and to have balance and to really help us thrive financially, et cetera. And sometimes we get into a little bit of a rut where we think some of those things aren't possible anymore. At that point, go wrap up this business thing, go get a job and go enjoy your life a little bit more, because 5 o'clock rolls around and you don't have 14 things on your mind. If that's not the case, then it's time to maybe revive some of your thought process around what is the life that I want to be living and how can I build this business to support it? It is absolutely doable, especially if you get really clear and passionate about wanting that. And you're talking about several different aspects of this. You've got to take your time off. I think there's some head trash I hear like, well, I can't leave at 3 o'clock. My employees work till 4:30. When I hear that, I just want to smack people. I'm like, think for a second of the amount of stress and time and effort that you have put into this business. You absolutely deserve it. That is total head trash for you to think that you leaving the business early, or if you think that and you think your team's going to fall apart because of it, we got a whole nother thing we need to work on. Work-life balance. I've been grappling with this a little bit lately where I'm going, I've done it over the years, but it's like, all right, hang on. Is this business and this iteration of the business, is this what I want? Is this supporting what I'm looking to do? Do I want, one of the things last year, one of the goals was I want to work out 2 times a week during my work day, because I don't want to work out at 6 a.m. because then I wouldn't take the kids to school and then I wouldn't have that time with them and my wife wouldn't get to sleep in. And my wife seems to love me more when I let her sleep in the morning. I don't want to work out at 5:30 p.m. and screw that up, or 8 p.m. That's just family time. I don't want to. So like that was one little thing of I want to build a business that allows me to do that twice a week. I was in a pretty good groove with that, have kind of fallen back on that. Interesting. Get really clear with what your work-life integration, work-life balance looks like. And let's start working on taking that more serious. What else would you add on to that?
One more book. One of the first books I ever read as a business owner was The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Okay, that's an oldie. And his whole idea is, look, you need to spend time working on the business versus working in the business. We've heard that 100 times. Yep. Build your business so that it can do one of 3 things. It allows you to be away from the business and it still operates. You can franchise it and expand it, or you exit, which means you sell the business. And it's kind of the same idea to build your business in a certain manner that any one of those 3 things can happen. And I learned that lesson early on. And I think that's an important lesson. So like you just said, which I think is perfect, is you need to, if you're not able to do that, you got to get that out of your head and change some things, or go get a job. I mean, how many people do we know that have really great jobs? They get paid time off, they get sick pay, vacation pay, they get all these things, they get a great retirement. It works for them, right? I mean, that's not how I'm programmed, but it's good for some people. So
whenever that advice comes out of my coaching mouth over the years, I'd say dozens of times at this point, of going, well, time out. Like, especially if I'm talking to a prospect or a remodeler who's been listening to podcasts and they're just kind of reaching out to inquire about coaching. I'm hearing their story or get to know some people. And I'm like, maybe have you ever even thought about like just kind of wrapping this thing up and just going and getting a nice project manager gig at $95K plus benefits and this and that? And, there's been times over the years where it's exactly what somebody needed to hear. There's other times and they needed to do that. There's more often than not, what it turns into is, no, I would hate that. I would feel like I'm letting myself down. I'd feel like a failure. I'd feel like, no, I've got so much interest in making this happen and desire to make this happen. Cool. And if that's the case, it's time to lock in and start doing things differently. And just like the mindset conversation earlier, it is absolutely possible to be running a fledgling, there's another F word, a fledgling, flaky, frustrating, give me another word. I don't swear on this.
Oh, freaking.
Freaking, freaking,
Fetching.
huh?
Fetching. That's a good Utah
Fetching
word. Fetching.
business, and absolutely shift it into something that actually supports you and your life. It's absolutely doable. For a lot of you listening, it means you got to start locking in on your numbers. Stop being a 3 out of 10 in your skill level with your numbers and get up to 7 or 8 or 9 out of 10. Start figuring out how to put on your marketing hat and really build a brand and be consistent with your marketing. Stop looking at I'm a salesperson as a negative and become a stinking amazing salesperson that has a clear process, that has an understanding of how to sell benefits and to read the client and to be a student of the psychology of the client. Like you can absolutely, and stop being a crappy leader. Some of you are crappy leaders, and you can absolutely become a kick butt leader. But you got to start reading some books. You got to start changing your crappy mindset. You got to start shifting this. Yeah. That was a good rant.
That was a great rant. That was like a sermon of a rant. I appreciate that.
More of a homily, like a quick one. I could give a sermon, but I'll keep it a little homily, a little short, little hitter.
Okay, I liked it. Good. I was impressed.
Chris, if they heard nothing else in what you shared today, or even around these 3 topics, maybe it's something that we already talked about, or something else that's coming to your mind. I want you to leave them with a kind of a closing thought, and then also how would they get to know you and your podcast and what you do a little bit more? Where would they go?
Well, Kyle, I appreciate that. I remember one of the very first quotes I ever was ever put in front of me was by Napoleon Hill. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And that is so true. I mean, that was a quote he threw out there in the early 1900s, and I still believe it's true. And we talked about mindset quite a bit, and I'm a huge fan. Whatever you can, picture in your mind, go make it happen. And look at other people that have done it. There's so many people that have had great success with nothing and turned into something great. So absolutely, mindset's key. My website is bootstrapsandbattlescars.com. It's a pretty simple website. It's got a contact me, and I'd love to hear from anybody that has questions. We have access to our podcast, which is called Bootstraps and Battle Scars. And it's just me talking to other fellow entrepreneurs and hearing their stories. And there's some good stories. I've had some pretty successful.
Maybe I'll be a podcast guest someday.
Kyle, if we could just jazz up the name a little bit. So we're gonna have to go with Ryan's Hunt. It will be our
Ryan's Hunt with remodelers on the rise. We'll go the R theme.
Bootstraps. Yeah, we did an F theme today, so let's go shift to an R theme. Yeah, I like it.
Okay. That's excellent. Yeah, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. So it's a good initial book. It's so interesting. There's certain books that the E-Myth is one, especially when you start going into the business side, and Think and Grow Rich. Oh, I think I'm interested in business. All right, 15-year-old, read this book. There's certain books. How to Win Friends and Influence People. But with that said, start paying attention to those classics. If it's a business classic that is just as relevant in 2026 as it was in 1976 or Napoleon Hill's case 20s and 30s or whenever it came out, it must have some wisdom in there. And Chris, you got some wisdom in there too. It was good meeting you. Good having you share. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. And I don't know if we're going to be Harley riding together, but I think this is not going to be our last conversation.
I like that. I look forward to it, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning into the Remodelers on the Rise show. Whether you're listening or watching, I appreciate you being here. If this was helpful, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. We're putting out new episodes every single week, focused on helping you build a better remodeling business with real stories, practical ideas, and things you can actually take and use. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button and turn on notifications so you know when new episodes drop. If you're listening on a podcast app, a 5-star review goes a long way and helps more remodelers find the show. We've got great links below or in the show notes where you can connect with us, check out our remodelers community, and learn more about our coaching and resources. Appreciate you very much. See you on the next episode.